It's here, another episode of Game Relics Fireball Island, in which we hope to assemble this crate. It has been a while, I'm going to admit, since the last episode, and I know I keep saying this is going to be the final episode. Well, I'm not going to say it this time because something tells me I'm not going to get everything done, and that's okay. We'll just see how much I can get done today and maybe in a few other days. Today's big challenge is sticking all of these pieces together. You may be noticing this incredible laser work. Let's take a look at how I did that. In order to replicate a classic kind of dynamite box, old crate with the burned edges, we turned to the laser cutter and a bunch of neat artwork that I put into the machine. Now, full disclosure, I do not know how to run this incredibly complex laser, and Mrs. Van Tiki really did all of this magic while I just sat back and watched with pure joy because watching the laser is magical. We ended up with the 2 long sides and 2 short sides with a variety of stamps, stencils, and emblems engraved or burned into the surface of the wood with the laser cutter. Yeah, so they look fantastic. I sunk a ton of time into all these parts. I really hope I can fit them all together. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. This is terrifying to put it together. You know, you put so much time into a project that it's like there's like an inverted graph where the more time you put into it, the more you freak out about destroying it while you're working on it. Gluing it is going to be tricky. It is such a tight fit. I don't think that there's a lot of room for glue. And then I always worry about getting the extra glue off. At any rate, I got this new fancy pants tool. It's a pin nailer. And I did a test and I can drive pins into these edges so that it holds it together and I don't have to use any glue. At least that's the plan. Let's all hope it works. Okay, we hopped onto the sturdier work table because I can actually clamp this to the table. I think it's a more level surface. I'm going to knock these down just a little bit more with the hammer and then we're gonna shoot them with the pin gun. Okay, so now that I've got the box built, it's time for some super critical measurement. And that's to make sure that when the game is upside down and in here, it will actually fit in here. So, I know that the game is exactly 7 inches high. My plan was to have it on this walnut frame, and I was going to put the planking on top like this. So this is going to sit here. I've got the walnut frame, and then I've got the board sitting inside of this space. And wouldn't you know it, it's exactly 7 inches. I'm so glad. Now, I did have an alternate plan. If I needed more room, I was going to bump this up and then put the planking on top like this. I don't like that, though. I'm happy that it fits. I'm happy that for once my math actually works. And I think that means that we can actually put the walnut frame and start putting the top together. Oh my God, it's all happening. It's all coming together. Dun, dun, dun. So close and yet so far. There's a little dilemma. The lights are controlled by these battery packs that have a light switch on them. I don't like the positioning of these light switches on these battery packs. I plan on hiding the battery packs inside of the game board somewhere. But I'd like to put a switch out here. And I would like to put that in there nicely. I've got this tiny little switch. I only have one of them. Fortunately, my neighbor, who is also my dad, has possibly 2. So I'm going to run up to his house, see if he's got 2 micro switches that'll work. And then I actually am going to have to route out a nice space here for the switches before I assemble the base frame. I've kind of been putting this off, I'm not going to lie, because it's a little finicky and I like to procrastinate on the finicky stuff. Okay, so in order to get a little switch, in order to get a second little switch, I went online and I ordered like 5 of them from Adafruit.com. It's a great website. Yes, I paid a fortune on shipping because I'm just getting a tiny little thing, but We're not going to dwell on that. What we are going to do is get out the shaper and do some final fancy cutting into that walnut frame to make a little pocket for this, and I think maybe some black acrylic as like a little mounting plate for it. It's kind of a mess in here, sorry. So to do this, we are using the Shaper Origin. It is a handheld CNC router, which I have used in past episodes of Game Relics. You can watch back and see what I'm doing. Today, we're also using the workstation, which is this thing that I'm bolting to the desk. And in addition, the Shaper, it uses this, computer-controlled router, but you have to have a file to actually route. So once I got this all set up, I hopped back to the house and made a small digital file of the cut that I plan on making at the exact size. Once I had that, it was cutting time. Okay, so I have got the design right here placed in the shaper. I downloaded it onto the machine from my computer via technology magic, and I'm ready to cut it. I've got it positioned, I think, in a safe spot on the walnut where I will not hit any of the screws holding this thing together. This was a lot of fun to cut. This is the fastest cut setup I've ever done using the Shaper Origin. Usually I'll spend days in the studio and on my computer planning out the cuts before I do it. This time I spent all of 5 minutes planning this cut. Did I mess it up? Yes, but not in a way that you'll notice it. I went a little too deep in one spot, but it's not going to matter once we get this thing assembled. Okay, it is Sunday, day 2 of this surprise Fireball weekend. I have got the frame piece ready. We put the nice little hole in there, the puka, if you will, for the switches, and we've got the crate mostly put together. Today, for my final weekend day, I want to stick this frame piece into the top section of the crate and maybe stain it. I don't know. We'll see how far we can get. I don't want to make things difficult for myself today. I just want to enjoy my time with the project. I do have some hardware that I got for this, which I realize I haven't discussed yet. So let's take a quick look at the hardware for the crate. I've got 2 solid brass handles, pull handles. These are going to be attached to the top section, and then you're going to lift the lid up with and flip it over with. So I want them to be robust and look very nice. So hence the solid brass. I've also got some non-locking chest hasps. That's a fancy word for just like a little chest clip that is going to hold the top down when you're not playing the game. Now, I am not a fine woodworker, but I'm very proud of what's happening here, and I understand that there's many levels of woodworking, but please don't look at this and think this is the proper way to do it. It's just the way that I'm doing it, and it's working okay so far. Will this be around in 1,000 years? Who knows, but it's going to work for gameplay, and I'm having fun doing it. You can tell that I feel the pressure of the eyes that I know will be watching this video later and thinking, are they watching what I'm doing and saying he's using the wrong kind of nails and all that kind of stuff? It does dwell in my head, I gotta admit, as I make these videos, because I'm not claiming to be an expert at anything. All right, lid is together. Is it perfectly square? It's mostly square. There's a little bit of a wobble, but it's a crate. I'm not gonna worry about it. Now, in order to keep this thing in position while people are playing the game, I am gonna put some little strips on like so. And these will act as guides when you take the lid on and off to help you center it. Okay, so I have made my crate staves, side planks, alignment pin things. I did a nice rounding on the tops so you can it'll make it easier to get the lid on and off, I believe. And I did a nice rounding on the bottom so you don't catch your fingers or whatever when you're moving the crate around. I did a wide stave for the long sides and a thin stave for the short sides, and I have very carefully figured out a spacing that'll work without messing up any of the graphics that I laid out on the side of the box. Let's stick some of these things on. To attach the side wood thingies, I used a combination of wood glue and the new handy-dandy little pin nailer, which holds the wood in place while the glue dries. It is so fast and convenient, a really nice way to do it. I love this thing. And no, they don't sponsor me. Okay, all of the staves, slats, brackets, whatever you want to call them, I am not a crate professional, are in. Let's see if it works. Ooh. Yeah. Ta-da! Oh! Fabulous. Oh, a little tight. Woohoo! So relieved. Okay, so now that we got the crate done, now we have the dilemma of the lid. Now, I had planned on covering this with planking, but I only have this much left. I've got that board and a couple of these guys. And I remember when we started, it's like I had so much of this wood. This is all I got left. It's not enough for me to run the long way, so I'm gonna have to run the short way. And I just have a few, let's see, it's coming up on lunchtime. I've just got a few more hours today to wrap this thing up. I think I'm gonna take the table saw back out and try to cut these slats and get them figured out with the rest of the time I have today. Quick note, I do need to make the centerpiece removable because I'm gonna need to get back into here to change batteries out, and just in case anything goes wrong with the wiring while we're playing the game, I need to have access to it. So I will probably nail down these end ones, and then the center one, I will either use magnets or just some screws, but I've got to be able to take this piece out. Okay, I've got all of the top planks cut. They fit great. Now, some of them are a little warped, so I'm trying to figure out how to best attach these. I've got the frame clamped down to the workbench surface so it stays relatively square and true. Maybe it's going to be screws. Definitely there's going to be some glue involved. This piece number 2, is the part that's got to pop out occasionally. So this will definitely be held in with screws. And I think I'm going to have to make like a little finger hole to give me access to it, because there's no way to get this board out once it's set in. I went ahead and drilled a small finger notch to let us get the board in and out while we were playing the game. And while doing that, I really kind of did some deep thought on whether or not screws were going to work best for holding the rest of the planks on the top. Okay, the little finger hole is fantastic, but man, I just don't think I like the idea of using screws to hold this down, because if you're flipping this to play the game, my concern is the screws could scratch up a table surface. Now, I am planning on putting like a little cork sticky thing on here, so when you flip it, it doesn't mar a table, but I just don't like the idea of all those visible fasteners. So I might try to do magnets for this and then glue and pin these other pieces in. But I don't know, we're running out of time. Maybe I'll just do the end pieces today and then call it and just see how that goes. Oh, it's a dilemma. Okay, I glued and pinned in this end board, and it looks good. I'm glad I decided not to do the screws. Breathing, staying calm. We're gonna try to do the rest of the boards. It's finicky, but I have to remind myself that this is not a piece of court furniture. This is a storage crate. It's a crate. It was boxed up on an island to export a mysterious jewel to a museum or a private collection of an evil genius. Who can say? All I know is I don't have to have so much anxiety about everything being perfect. This is something I should possibly follow for most of my life, but at any rate, let's just get this board back in there. Okay, this is a great example of why I am absolutely in love with this pin nailer. I'm using the old glue and pin nailer as a vise kind of technique. So after applying a liberal amount of wood glue, I'm going to put the board in. Now this board is super warped, so I'm going to pin in one end first. And now I'm going to really just push it down, and the pins are going to hold the other end in place while I pin this end and hold it in place. Now the glue will dry and hold it in place. It's magic. Ha-ha. What-a! Can you believe it? Oh, it's a crate! And the little hatch works fantastically. We'll get some magnets, or we'll figure something out to attach this so I can get to the wiring inside of the island. So stoked! What have we got left? Well, I want to put some holes here to put some rope in so I can tie some handles on there. I want to attach the hardware on the sides. I don't have enough of this, so I ordered some more so I can put 2 on each one. One will latch it when it's closed. One will latch it when it's in gameplay position. What else do we need? Oh, and the brass handles, I have to attach those. All of that hardware is not going to go on until we have this thing sealed. I've got a nice, what have I got? I got water locks, that's what I'm going to use. And yeah, I'm so excited about this. So excited! It's Monday afternoon, my studio work is done for the day, which means I've got about 40 minutes to devote to Fireball Island. I'm going to use that 40 minutes by adding handles to the side. I want to do a nice like hemp rope handle, like an old crate. And I just happen to have this monkey's fist that I got at like a nautical souvenir store as a reference for when I did the monkey's fist mugs for Hidden Harbor. It's got a nice pliable hemp rope, and I think it'll make a great handle. So what I'm going to do is figure out the spacing that will work well without messing up the stamps that I've added, and drill the holes. I'm not going to add the rope until after I have sealed all of the wood, because this would just be a sticky mess with this and the sealant, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so we're gonna just drill the holes today. Yeah. Okay, so when I laid these out, the patterns, I had kind of a rough ballpark idea of where I wanted to space the things. I did plan on having the hemp handle overlap this cool diver stamp, but this hole is gonna be a little, so I'm just gonna space this a little wider. I have this set at 5. I'm just gonna go to 5.5, and I think it'll work great. I think. Again, when you work so long and hard on a project, the last thing you want to do is mess it up by putting a hole in the wrong spot or messing up your hole. So I really did measure like a million times before committing to drilling. And when I did drill, I clamped a backer board on this so that the drill bit wouldn't chip or break away the wood as it exited the other side of the boards. Long story short, it turned out great, and I am very happy with the overall look of the rope holes. Love it! Like I said, this rope, I'm going to take it out for now, but it's going to look so good. I can't have it on there when I put the sealant on the wood. It'll just be a disaster. Yay! So that is today's progress. Baby steps, baby steps. Hope to get a little bit of time in every day this week. The switches are here. Let's see if they fit. Okay, so electronics, always tiny little items, so shipping usually costs more than the item itself, so we only needed 2, but I got a bunch. I hope they fit. Let's find out. These switches are a little larger, and actually they're kind of a lot larger than the original micro switch that I designed this opening for. So I am concerned. Oh, so lucky. Okay, those are going to fit just great, which means I can start sealing all of this wood. Today we're going to use Waterlocks. It's like a Tung Oil resin finish. I love this stuff because you can apply it, sand it, later you can reapply a little more. It's fantastic stuff, but it does smell nasty. This is the medium sheen. It's VOC compliant, which means it has a low VOC, but it's still, I guess that's volatile organic compounds, basically things you don't want to inhale. It's low, but it's still incredibly nasty. I'm going to be wearing a respirator while I apply it. And you want to be really careful when you're done with this stuff to not leave all your brushes and rags in a container because they can spontaneously combust as the resin kicks off and hardens. So you want to be very careful with that. When I'm done with this, I'm going to put all my brushes outside. I'm going to get them wet and I'm going to let them dry far away from each other. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Let's get some resin on. So I'm going to be applying using these little sponge brushes. Waterlocks is, like I said, nasty stuff, so I'll be wearing a respirator for the entire process, and it also tends to seal the lids closed when you leave it sitting for years on a shelf, so wrenches are a great help. It is a dark compound, so it's going to darken the wood as I apply it, and I'm fine with that because I want this to look like, as I keep saying, an old crate. I'm a little rusty, so I started with the back of the lid to practice applying the Waterlocks. This is the first coat, so I'm going to be putting this first coat on, and then I'm going to do a light sanding, and then a second coat. So I'm not really sweating the details on this first coat. I'm just making sure I get everything covered well, and then I don't glob on too much of it. Once the lid was covered, it was time to move on to the crate itself, and here you can really get a good idea of how it darkens the wood. Fortunately, Mrs. Van Tikes did such a fantastic job on the engraving. The stencils burned into the wood show up fantastic, even with the stain applied. These sponge brushes are great for getting on a first coat. They really put on a lot of material. In fact, sometimes they put in too much. So I will go back with a rag and kind of sop up any puddles or areas that look like they're too thick to dry properly. Once again, this is just the first coat, so I am not that concerned about the overall finish. When everything is done, I made sure to soak my rags in water, and then the rags, the brush, and the nearly empty container of oil went out onto the stoop in the rain where I knew that they would not burst into flame overnight. Okay. Blah. There we go. All done. I'm doing this on a weekend morning because I know that we won't be coming into the studio for a few days, so that gives that plenty of time to off gas and do what it's got to do before we got to come back in here and work. It's very stinky, so I'm now going to leave the studio and let my lungs recover. Now, I should say I didn't smell anything. The mask worked really well, but my eyes do burn a little bit. I'm a little sensitive to that stuff, so I try to do it as quickly as I possibly can and then just get out of there. So here we are. We are at what I would like to think of as the home stretch. Yes, I'm going to go on record. Next episode will be the last episode. What are we going to do? Well, we are going to put a final coat of sealant onto the crates. We got to sand it, put our final coat on it. We are going to wire the switches for the game. We are going to put in the storage for all the game elements inside of the crate. And lastly, we're going to make some legs for this crate so that it can be a proper coffee table when we're not playing it. And then we'll actually play the game. Thanks for watching, and I will see you at the next episode.